Welcome to Public Health America, a weekly program produced by BronxNet in partnership with Mercy College. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. Here on Public Health America, we speak with experts from an array of specialties across the liberal arts and health professions to provide you with not only the best science, but practical tips to live a healthier life. We also celebrate what studies have long documented, namely the unparalleled value of a liberal arts college education by setting the stage to pursue a career of your choice, increase lifetime earnings, and engage in civil debate. Our experts will share decisions they made and support they received that helped them to beat the odds. By sharing one or two life lessons, their stories may provide you with the inspiration and method to realize your dreams. This is Public Health America. Welcome to Public Health America. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. It's my pleasure to have with us today Dr. Nicole Johnson, Assistant Professor of Behavioral Health at Thomas Jefferson University. Nicole, welcome to the program.
Welcome. Thank you. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Glad to have you here. So I know you've been doing some really important work at the intersection of looking at collaboration with faith-based organizations, faith community, and to enhance the knowledge of trauma and options on how to respond to trauma in our communities and beyond. Tell us a little bit about your work.
Yes, thank you. So we have been working for the past 4 years, since 2019, on a collaborative, the Interfaith Leaders Learning Collaborative on Trauma. And during this collaborative, we have brought together faith leaders in the community in and around the Philadelphia area to provide education and information on how they might best serve persons who experience with trauma. A lot of times faith leaders are at the forefront of traumatic situations, and whether it's gun violence, whether it is a mass shooting, whether it is some type of dissension in the community. And so we thought it would be wise to educate and to arm our faith leaders with information on how they can best serve those they serve in their community.
Got it. And so when we talk about trauma, give us that could mean a lot of things, right? I mean, is there, tell us a little bit about what is the focus or foci these days, and if things have evolved over time, or if they have been tragically similar, or just what's the landscape?
I believe that, the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA, has a definition of trauma which includes 3 E's that they developed in 2014. And it really rings true today. Trauma can be the event, like a earthquake or a hurricane, or even some type of assault or abuse. Trauma is also not only the event, but trauma can be described as the experience, like what someone experienced when the event happened. So 2 people may be in a hurricane. One may have experienced trauma because of the hurricane, and someone else may have come out of the hurricane unscathed. And so trauma is not only the event, the hurricane. Trauma may be the experience. One person lost all of their belongings and someone else didn't lose anything. And then trauma is also the effect. What are the long-term effects that this experience and this event may have on a person's mental and physical wellness? And so those are the 3 E's of trauma. And I think that really explains it holistically so people can understand it.
Sure. That's very helpful. I'd never heard, I'm familiar with SAMHSA, but I had not heard that definition. So what, again, Thomas Jefferson based in Philadelphia, is most of your work Philly based, or is it regional or national? And what are the main things that you find yourself focusing on, and how does that link to faith-based communities?
So my work primarily from the university is local in Philadelphia and the surrounding areas, but I also have done consulting and outreach in the New York area, primarily in the Brooklyn area. I've done also work in the South, in South Carolina, North Carolina, and most of my work has been around educating faith leaders about how trauma can relate to issues around substance use disorder or mental health diagnoses. And so, really understanding how people who have experienced trauma, how they may need supports so they can be helped if they have a substance use disorder or have mental health issues. So, really educating has been the outreach of my work.
Got it. Okay, that's very helpful. So that I would imagine that would be things like letting faith leaders know things like prevalence and incidence of substance use that might be linked to trauma and or mental disorders. Let's focus on Philadelphia for a little bit. What if I were to attend one of your in-services or trainings with faith leaders? What would be some of the primary points that you're making to raise awareness?
One of the first things I would do is to really talk about the impact of childhood trauma on the lifespan. So I would start talking about, how does trauma show up in children? What are their behavioral responses? Once a child has experienced trauma, are they now not being able to perform well in school? Are they exhibiting behaviors that parents may be consider concerning? And so with that, I will start building a case for why we have to have information on trauma. And also I want to educate faith leaders on how they can support to reduce the impact of trauma, just being a supportive system for families and for children.
No, clearly an incredibly important topic. So if I were to ask, what are a key point you're making is that childhood trauma is incredibly important. My guess is that people, generally speaking, might not be aware of its prevalence, meaning the number of folks that have experienced trauma in childhood. And then your second point is that it has lifelong effects that could be very negative.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the childhood traumas that we should be keeping our eye out for or try to prevent? And what is their prevalence? Do we know?
So we know that at least out of 5 people, at least 3 to 4 of those persons have experienced immense trauma in their childhood. So trauma is more prevalent than it is not prevalent. In addition to that, we know that because of childhood trauma, it can impact brain development. It can impact a child's ability to make positive relationships and connections with adults, have a trusted relationship. And we also know that because of childhood trauma, children may be impacted in the school system, meaning they may have early behavioral issues in school, could lead them into disciplinary problems in school, and eventually could possibly lead to substance use disorder and increase prevalence of mental health disorders.
So if 3 to 4 out of 5 people have experienced childhood trauma, I mean, that's almost everyone.
Yes.
What specifically are we talking about when we talk about childhood trauma?
We're talking about everything from bullying. We can be talking about the loss of a parent or the loss of a loved one. We can be talking about a family member or a friend who's died by suicide. We can talk about growing up in a home where there's substance use disorder being used in the home. We could talk about neglect, a child not getting their needs met. Or we could talk about physical or sexual abuse. All of those are traumas. We could talk about the neighborhood, even being in a neighborhood where there is gun violence, fear of actually walking through the neighborhood. All of those are experiences of trauma that children can face.
Got it. So it's helpful to just get that list articulated. So bullying, loss of a parent, suicide, substance abuse. Is there any relevance to change over time? And let me be specific about what I mean by that. So I would argue and with or without any proof, that when I was a kid, many, many, many years ago, bullying wasn't known as a thing. Do you know what I mean? Like it just it wasn't something that teachers looked out for. And I'm not saying that teachers didn't address it 50 years ago. I'm sure they did. I'm just saying that I think there's a greater awareness now that bullying is detrimental and needs to be stopped, prevented, addressed, etc. When I look at this, very disturbing list, have there been changes over time in terms of awareness of their significance? And a second question, and these are two perhaps very unrelated or different questions, and that is, do we know anything about the sequelae, the differentness of these kinds of traumas and how they impact people short and long term? Or is it just all trauma's bad and it's the same?
Well, let me answer your first question. First of all, it is different now than back years ago. And the reason why is because children nowadays have more opportunities to be bullied. So back in the day, everyone didn't have a cell phone. And access to social media and all of these platforms that our young people have. Meaning that if I was receiving some negative comments from a peer, that would happen when I saw them face to face, and that would be over. And then when nowadays, it's not only when I see them face to face, I get an email, I get a text message, somebody's blasting me on social media. So it's so much information, negative information with bullying, that it is a lot more opportunity for children to be bullied. And people are more aware now that it is happening because we're bringing highlights to social media, highlights to all of the other things that are where our students are receiving that information. So that's the first part of your question. The second part, having to do with how can we address this? What is the long-term impact? Is it the same? Well, this is one of the reasons why we connected with the faith community, because we understand that when we have supportive systems around us, that it can mitigate the impact of trauma. It can address it. It can support wellness. And the more we support wellness, the less we will see the long-term effects of stress on our young people and even on adults, and how these protective factors, these communities of care, these communities of support can help address issues that are a result of trauma early as opposed to later.
Sure. So that there are, that's a sign of some hope there, right? Meaning that there are things we can be doing to mitigate the negative effects of trauma. And certainly it's sort of inherent within that logic that being able to identify trauma and intervene is important, which is a big part of what ostensibly you're doing. With a little bit of time left, Nicole, let me ask the question of talk a little bit about, you're raising awareness, you're working with faith-based communities to do that. What's the next step? Like, is it to facilitate within faith-based communities, outreach that identifies folks that have experienced trauma so that they can be intervened with, or what's the next step? What's the link?
And so right now we're actually working to increase the outreach. And so we are not only wanting to train faith leaders in how to notice the impact of trauma, we also want to start developing the faith leaders as trainers themselves so that they can continue to stimulate conversation around that. In addition to that, we're bringing faith leaders together with agencies and resources so that we can provide and help to support a referral stream. So if someone notices that someone is having some negative responses to trauma, they're having mental health concerns, they're having substance use concerns, then we are arming the faith leaders with a list of resources, with connections to mental health agencies, that they can make referrals to those agencies so that people can get the help that they need.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, Nicole is going to tell us a little bit about her undergraduate experience and how that was critical to developing this excellent profession and career to promote health and address childhood trauma by working with faith-based institutions and related research and activities that she's doing. This is Public Health America. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. We'll be right back.
You can now watch MNN, Brick TV, QPTV, and SIC TV on BronxNet. Tune in to BX Omni, Channel 67 Optimum, 2133 Fios during most Sunday evenings. We'll show you some amazing content from our friends at Manhattan Neighborhood Network, Brick TV in Brooklyn, Queens Public Television, and Staten Island Community Television. Every borough represented in the Boogie Down. Epic partnerships for the ages. And catch our new Next channel, produced in partnership with MNN, 24/7 on BronxNet Channel 952 Optimum and 2138 Fios.
Most hiring algorithms would scream me out.
Some bosses couldn't see me as a leader.
I've run this place for 20 years, but I still need to prove that I'm more than what you see on paper.
I've been running code as long as I've been able to reach a keyboard.
This is what I do. It's second nature for me, coordinating 100 details at once.
It's the way my mind works. I have a very mechanical brain.
I sold them on my skills.
You gotta be so good they can't ignore you.
My magic is
Analytics and empathy. That's how I'm getting clients. You have to have the confidence in yourself to show up and defy the odds.
I'm more than who I am on paper.
I never got a college degree. And today, I'm the CEO of my own company. People want to tell me I'm one in a million, when actually I'm one of millions. Stars are all around us. It's time for them to shine.
How do you know when you've made the right decision? It's the feeling you get in your gut, the one that tells you what's right or wrong. It's the one that says, sure, I can have a drink, or the feeling that says, okay, I've been drinking, now what? It's the voice inside you that says, I'm buzzed, better leave the car when it's time to go. Plan ahead, catch a sober ride. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back to Public Health America. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. So Nicole, we always begin the second part of the program with the same question, which is, tell us where you were born and about some of your formative experiences.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so I was born in Philadelphia, lived there all my life. And part of the reason why I've chosen the track that I am is because I had an older sister who went to college. And when I saw my older sister start applying to college, it excited me very much. And I wanted to follow that same path. I'm the middle of 5 girls. And so we just saw the path of the oldest going to college and the second oldest went to college. And then I said, okay, it's my turn. And so I went to college. But I will say that college, my undergrad experience was met with challenges. I did well in high school, graduated from a very good school here, but I was not mentally prepared for college. So I encourage any young person, if they have opportunity to go to like a summer bridge program or orientation, to do that, because it can be helpful. And so I was going into college to become a OBGYN. I wanted to deliver babies. And then I met calculus. And when I met calculus, the two did not mix. I couldn't get calculus. And so it was at that point I had to, as they say, pivot. I had to think about it. Like, do I want to go another semester and try to get this calculus? Or is there something else that can still put me working with children, that can still put me in the field, but not exactly being a medical doctor? And counseling, I was already a psych major, and counseling was my path. And I really believe that sometimes that we may feel that we are not successful in a particular area and maybe we should give up. But I really believe that it's not that we should give up. It's just that maybe we should go into another direction. And so since I entered the field of counseling, I have never been happier. This is me. This is where I belonged. I often wonder what my life would have been like if it was, if I did become an OBGYN. And I kind of feel like maybe I'm in the right place, that I'm in the right field.
That's a great story and such, really excellent points. I want to highlight the idea of a summer bridge program just so the audience sort of has a sense of what that means, because it could mean a lot of things. But really, at the end of the day, what it is a preparatory program that could be 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 4 weeks, that kind of just gets you ready, prepares you for college. Chestnut Hill College, also here in Philadelphia, has numerous of those, and we find the students that do those do phenomenally well. And I think a big part of that is being involved. So I agree with that completely. I think a second really important point that I think sometimes young people miss is that you went in thinking you'd do one thing and then went somewhere else. And I think, just the notion that you don't have to know everything when you start, and that a lot of it is about the journey. And clearly your journey has been incredibly successful and yet took some turns along the way. And then, of course, obviously it's lovely, the story about your sister and sisters charting a course forward so that you had, role models in your own family that you could emulate. And you're one of 5 girls, so there you go. That's all great. So where did you do your undergrad? What was your major and what was that experience like?
So I did my undergrad at Temple University. I was, as I mentioned, I was trying to pattern after my sister. So I wanted to be a psychology and a French double major. Psychology stuck and French did not. So I wound up being a psychology major with a minor in English. And so that's what I did my undergraduate in. And it was a wonderful experience. It was different because I was used to the high school scene where teachers are reminding you of things. And when I got into college, it wasn't like that. I was given assignments, I was given a syllabus, and I was given an expectation that I was going to have my work in on time. So it took a little bit getting used to someone not running after you for work. And also, it caused me to actually start learning that I needed to reach out for help because there was help available, there were resources available, but I needed to reach out to get them. They weren't going to just fall in my lap. I was in a class of 100 students, and that instructor, now I'm a professor myself, I understand that instructor has a lot on their plate. And so they might not be able to reach out to everyone that they may think to reach out to, but these resources are there and they're available for me, so I can access them.
That's great. And the importance of knowing that it's useful to reach out for that assistance. Could be in anything, could be math, could be writing, could be other things, but most colleges, certainly Temple, Chestnut Hill, Jefferson, etc., have those services. So knowing that they're there to support you is another reason to go. Tell us about your journey after Temple. Did you work for a while? Did you go to grad school right away? Where did you go? What was the decision tree that next steps?
Well, my life took a very funny decision tree. So I had decided after undergrad that I didn't want to be a psychologist and I probably didn't want to work with children, and which is really weird because I wound up being just there. And so I spent 13 years working in business. I worked for a major organization in market development and franchise sales. And after the 13 years of business, I decided to go back to school for counseling and get my master's in counseling psychology. I went back to Temple University. And then from graduating with my master's degree, I went into the field and I was in the field all along when I was working on my master's, but I left the business and went into counseling. And so when I got into counseling, it really started to resonate with me. And that's how I began to move forward in the field and become a licensed professional counselor, working in addictions treatment. So I tell people, even though your path may not go as straight as you think, you will land where you need to be. And I'm a living witness and testimony of that.
Sure. And another related point to that excellent point is that people change careers, right? I mean, it's more common. I mean, you spent 13 years in business, probably were very successful, and then decided to take a turn there. And the notion of, adult learning and adults coming back to get advanced degrees, I mean, that's very common and a very important part of higher ed these days. So at some point, you went from the MA to the PhD, right? When did that happen, and what was that step?
So while I was working in the field, I had been working in the field for about 16 years, and I was already licensed and everything. I just felt like what I had learned in the field as a professional, as a program director, as a licensed counselor, that I can lend that experience to students. I felt that students in academia would be able to understand and to be able to get more out of the experiences that I had in the field. And so why can't I take this and teach somebody what I've learned and kind of save them some heartache, save them some stress and trouble, and give them some information. That's why I came into academia to teach.
Sure.
And got my PhD.
How much time between the master's and the PhD?
From the master's to the PhD was about 7 years.
7 years, okay. And where'd you do your PhD?
I did my PhD at Regent University.
Okay, great. So again, I mean, that's I think it's a story that could be told more, and that is you kind of had, like, at least, this is a gross oversimplification, but you had that 13 years of business, and then you got your master's, you worked again for a fair amount of time, learned more, and then went back to get your PhD, clearly as an adult, and then that set up a whole nother trajectory that's led you to your current post with a lot of very rich experience in your background. So I just think it's so important to our listeners to hear those kinds of stories, because it just shows there isn't one path, that you can change paths and both can still be very successful, and clearly all kinds of lessons that you've shared with us. So with all of that said, I want to thank Dr. Nicole Johnson for joining us today. I want to thank our viewers for tuning in. This is Public Health America. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. We'll see you next time. Until then, take care.